it's crazy. I was a kid playing baseball in Puerto Rico, and all of a sudden I'm in the All-Star game in clubhouses with all those guys. It's just amazing.
What is good, everybody? Nathan Lombardo here with Lambo Media, joined by very, very special guest Javier Vazquez, a 14-year MLB alum, made an all-star appearance in 2004, played on Team Puerto Rico, which is where he was born in the World Baseball Classic. Javi, I really appreciate you hopping on. What have you been up to during these past few months, and what's the current status looking like for you?
Yep. Thanks for having me, and it's a pleasure for me to be here. Yeah, man, it's been a tough kind of year, like everybody else. Just hanging around my house for too long.
Yeah.
But we have to, man. We have to taking care of myself and my family. But you know what? Everything's good though. Can't complain.
Yeah, and you're obviously now not playing any more formal baseball. You haven't in a while, but are you still, swinging the bat just for fun, or throwing bullpens here and there, playing catch? What's that looking like for you now that you're retired? Are you just kind of staying laid back, playing some golf here and there? What's that looking like for you?
I do all that you
Okay.
just mentioned. I have a 16-year-old son. So I practice with him, I throw with him, I hit with him, I pitch to him. I play golf also, so I try to play at least once a week. But yeah, man, I'm still involved with baseball. I work for the Players Association,
Right.
so that has me involved. But you know what? Right now, it's just those things, man. Pretty much. I mean, I'm just practice with my son. Check that all my kids are doing well at school.
Mm-hmm.
And playing some golf.
Yeah, absolutely, Javi. And you mentioned you have a 16-year-old son who also plays baseball. Being in a position that you've experienced, and given the fact of experiences that you've had in the past, what advice can you give to your 16-year-old son regarding baseball at his age, and all about pressure, skill set? What advice do you give to him at this point in time?
Man, the best advice I can give a 16-year-old kid is have fun, because I think sometimes in baseball, especially at their age, there's a lot of pressure.
Right.
And where do they go to college, or what they're gonna do with their life. And I tell them just have fun, because sports supposed to be fun. When I was 16-year-old, I wasn't thinking about maybe getting to the big leagues or anything. I was just enjoying my time playing baseball with my friends every Saturday or during the week, and that's what I tell him. Just have fun and make sure that you love it, because if you don't love it, then there's no point of doing it. Make sure you love what you're doing.
Yeah, and I'm sure at this point in time, especially nowadays, it's hard to not, think about the future and think about what other kids are doing, because you're seeing some high schoolers, 15, 16-year-olds already touching 95 Vanderbilt commits.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm sure it's hard, for a lot of 16-year-old kids to not compare themselves to, other players, and, look too far into the future and worry about what colleges and scouts think about themselves. So I'm sure that's also a tough thing, especially for him, still being so young, with a lot of that stuff coming soon.
No doubt. And you know what? And I tell my son, but I tell other kids too when I talk to them. Everybody develops differently, right?
Right.
You have 15, 16-year-old kids that are, like you said, they're throwing 90, and
Right.
they're already committed. 8th, 9th grader already committed, which is crazy to me.
Yeah.
But you know what? Everybody develops differently. There's guys in the big leagues right now who didn't get drafted at all out of high school, and they go to college, and then all of a sudden, bam, they develop, they become bigger, they're men, and it's a different development. So when I was 15, 16-year-old, nobody probably thought that I was gonna play in the big leagues ever.
Yeah.
So that's my point. Everybody develops differently, and it's important for a 15, 16-year-old kid to know that, because like you said, there's a lot of pressure right now out there for the kids.
For sure, Javi. And to kind of transition away from that side of things, also when you were talking a little bit earlier, you also mentioned your position in the MLB Players Association. What does that look like for you on the day-to-day basis, and what does your position consist of for the MLB Players Association?
Yeah, well, so my title is International Special Assistant. I work a lot with international players and also work with international events. So every time there's a joint event with MLB in Mexico or Puerto Rico or Japan or London, I cover those, and I'm part of the logistics of everything. But you know what? I love it. Keeps me involved, and you know, I don't have to travel a whole lot, which for me was key because I've never gone into coaching because of that. You know, when I retired as a 34, 35-year-old. I could still keep playing, but I miss my family. I got tired of traveling all the time, so I don't want to be doing that right now.
Yeah, and previous to this 2020 season, there are a lot of, negotiations and conversations between the MLB Players Association and then the owners about, how they're going to handle this 2020 season regarding, paychecks, games, the amount of games in this 2020 schedule. What did that whole process look like in your position in particular, as far as those negotiations go with the owners? And, how did that kind of, all dissolve and get figured out?
Well, like you said, it's a negotiation, and I think it was kind of like when we negotiated for the basic agreement. It was like a mini basic agreement
Right.
because all the logistics, and we've never had anything like it. So both parties, were trying to get a deal, and at the end of the day, it worked out. I think the season, even though it was short season, but I think it was a success.
Right.
The playoffs were amazing. I thought the playoffs were great. So yeah, I mean, it worked out, but it's always, it's like you said, it's a negotiation, and it's kind of tough.
Mm-hmm. And being born in Puerto Rico and growing up there, and then transitioning into playing the game you love here in America, and nonetheless dominating here as well, not just, coming here to play for the enjoyment of it, but dominating in the game of baseball here in the U.S. as well. What did that whole process look like growing up for you? And, what was your childhood like? What did your childhood look like growing up?
Yep. So when I was growing up, I played a lot of sports. Played baseball, basketball, volleyball, which is huge here in Puerto Rico.
Okay.
So those were my three main sports that I played. Played tennis once in a while, and I love sports. I just try to everything. But obviously, baseball was the sport that I loved the most. Ever since I was like 3 years old, I remember I had a bat and a ball in my hand, and my father taught me how to hit, how to pitch,
Right.
basically everything in the game, and he loves it, and I continue doing that. I was blessed to be able to play in the big leagues.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And that being said, you also have the capability of competing in the World Baseball Classic for Team Puerto Rico, alongside players like Bernie Williams, Carlos Beltran, as well as Pudge Rodriguez, and many, many more, which Pudge you actually got to pitch to in the World Baseball Classic. What was that whole experience like? And in particular, especially knowing the fact that, you were representing your country.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had that question asked to me before, and I have the same answer. To me, just to play for your country and in those type of events, and with those type of players that I saw growing up. I was a fan of Pudge growing up. I was a fan of Bernie, and all of a sudden you're in the clubhouse and on the field with them, and Pudge is catching me. So to me, it was one of the best moments of my career, just being able to play with those guys, being able to represent my country in a high level tournament. And I enjoyed it immensely. I mean, to me, it was one of the highlights of my career.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, congrats on all that accolade. And there's many more to come in the future, even with the MLB Players Association and even being retired now. But you made your MLB debut back in 1998. Looking at the game in 1998 and, towards the beginning end of your career, and then looking at it now, What have you noticed has changed in the most in the game of baseball when looking at it back in 1998 compared to now?
Man, the first thing as a pitcher, the first thing I notice is how hard the guys are throwing nowadays. I mean, it's amazing to
Right.
see. And day in and day out, you see guys throwing 95 plus, like it's nothing.
Yeah.
And when I was playing, there was only a few of those guys throwing 98, 99, and 100. And now you see them every night.
Yeah.
So to me, that's amazing to see. And the talent right now, it really is amazing, man. The amount of athletes that they're playing the game right now, it's great. And you know, the other thing obviously is the numbers games right
Right.
now
Yeah.
that we're seeing in the big leagues, and the amount of everything's measured, which in the past, you know, you relied on your eye, I
Yeah.
guess, right? Scouts relied on the eye. Now
Right.
they have the eye plus the tools to measure what you're seeing. So that's kind of cool. I enjoy watching it. I enjoy learning about it. So that's probably the two things that I notice the most.
Yeah, and you just mentioned the analytical side of things. We're seeing it evolve much, much, and much more in the game of baseball, starting with 13, 14, 15-year-olds. I'm
Hmm.
sure, you know, your son is getting into it a lot as well as he's getting recruited by colleges and possibly MLB scouts as well. Perfect game tournaments, baseball factory tournaments, they're all using those metrics to their advantage. Do you personally like that they're, you know, relying on that heavily?
Well, I like parts of it,
Right.
and I don't, because I think there's some kids out there that are gonna be left out because their numbers don't add up.
Hmm.
And I'm sure that we're gonna probably miss the next Greg Maddux or Tom Glavine, right?
Right.
Guys who did not throw hard or didn't have spin rates
Hmm.
like crazy numbers. So that's the only thing. You know, I love watching the kids compete out there, and there's something about some kids that maybe they don't hit the ball as hard as somebody else, or maybe they don't throw as hard, especially pitchers,
Yeah.
but they can pitch. So, and I think that right now we're probably gonna miss a few of guys that know how to pitch, and that might could be in the big leagues because of their smarts, or a guy like Kyle Hendricks, for
Right.
example.
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't do anything overpowering, but he knows how to pitch. He locates well. He's very smart, and I think we're gonna miss some of those. That's the one thing that I'm seeing.
Yeah, and up to this point, there's talks swirling around about possible robotic umpires possibly in the future, you know, taking out the purity of the game and the umpires. What are your thoughts on that whole statement? Because I'm personally opposed to that possibly being implemented into the game in the future. What are your thoughts on that whole talk?
You know what? I think human error is part of it.
Yeah,
And I don't know. I like obviously seeing the umpires on there and calling balls and strikes and making mistakes like regular people, you know.
right.
And that I like. I've talked to some guys. Some guys would want the automatic strike zone just because it'll get the calls right.
Hmm.
Um, but I mean, I enjoy watching the umpires and seeing them, and they're, you know what, and this is something that I talk to a lot of guys. They're really good, man, because when you see the games out there and you see the ball that passes right on the black, and those guys call it, and then off the black they don't call it, and they miss once in a while. Of
Yeah,
course, they're not
yeah,
perfect, but
right.
they're really good. They're really good.
Yeah, especially, you know, like we were talking about earlier, especially with how fast pitchers' velocity is up to this point. I'm sure it's really tough to see it that
Yeah.
fast. And during your MLB career, Javi, you played for 6 different MLB teams throughout your career. What was that like during your MLB career when transitioning from team to team, and how was that for you mentally?
Well, the first 6 years with obviously with the Montreal Expos was great. Just because they were the team who drafted me.
Right.
All most of my teammates kind of grew up with me through the minors. And then every time I got traded, and I only played 1 year for a team, and then got traded and played, 3 for the White Sox, which was great also because I was there 3 years.
Right.
But every time that I got traded to a team and only play 1 year, that kind of it's kind of disappointing a little bit, just
Right.
because you have to move, and it's great to be in one team all your life, so that's, I see guys like Jeter or Yadi Molina, guys like that play for one team, and that's great, man. That's great, and it's a blessing. I wish I could have had something like that.
Yeah. Would you say one of the biggest things, the biggest reasons for that being tough mentally for you, especially when leaving teams like the White Sox and the Expos, like you just mentioned, would you say one of the toughest reasons when leaving those teams mentally for you was because of the relationships you built with, the fans in Montreal and then Chicago, and then also with the teammates there as well?
No doubt. I think that's the biggest thing. And there's also you feel comfortable, when you're there, when you're in a team for some years, you feel comfortable, and everybody, the staff, the front office, and you feel good. You feel good when you play with a team for more than a few years.
Yeah, most definitely. And you also had the capability to participate in the 2004 All-Star Game, which I'm sure was an incredible experience as well. What was that whole experience like for you, and what was your initial reaction after finding out that you're going to have the capability to compete in that 2004 All-Star Game?
Man, another great experience that I had. And it's crazy because when you walk in a clubhouse, and as a kid growing up that loved baseball, you're always watching games, you're always watching the all-star games, you pay attention to all the players
Right.
that have come before you, and just when you walk in the clubhouse and you see all the names that are there, it's like where am I?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's tough to explain. It's tough to explain the feeling.
Right.
But it's just it's crazy. I was a kid playing baseball in Puerto Rico, and all of a sudden I'm in the All-Star game in clubhouses with all those guys. It's just amazing.
Yeah, that's a truly amazing and inspiring story. But to wrap it up, Javi, what would you say out of your, 14 seasons in the MLB with 6 different teams, the All-Star experience in 2004, what was your biggest takeaway from your professional career playing the game of baseball?
Oof, wow, that's a good question. You know what? I think I was blessed. God blessed me with the talent to play baseball, and I was able to play 14 years and doing the right way. I think that to me, and that nobody can say a bad thing about me that I did or anything. That to me, that's great, because that's the way my mom and dad raised me, right? So that's something that I take. I played hard every day. Nobody can say that I never played hard either. Every time I went out to the mound, I gave 100% every time I went out, and that's what I take away, man. It's really a blessing to play in the majors. It's a blessing to play 14 years. That's a long time, and it's a blessing also that I could stop playing baseball when I wanted to stop playing baseball. That's just a blessing, because usually you get released, or you try to hang on with the team. That's usually the way athletes do it. But just to go out on my terms, that's something that I really like.
Yeah, well, listen, Javi, I really appreciate you taking the time. I love your approach, and what you just said was truly inspiring and inspiring to a lot of young kids out there looking to, be in the position that you were in the MLB one day. But Javi, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to make this interview happen. Best of luck in the future. Congrats on all of your success thus far, and there's definitely more to come.
Thanks a lot for having me. Best of luck to you.
Thank you, Javi.